home, Renegator.
All right, you're live.
Live from Mount Shasta. It's Monday night. Really? You're just throwing your shoes at me.
Welcome.
Welcome
Peace
home,
out.
Renegator.
I don't need this.
So, anybody want to talk about anything Toltec? Do we want to talk about something else?
I love to talk about, I listened to Coyote chapter 1. And
Yeah.
he talked about coins,
Yeah?
magical coins.
Mhm.
I'd like you to, one of these days, if not today, to talk about magical coins and like how you and Ario Luce work with the coins.
This is a G-rated show. I can't answer that question. I'm serious.
Okay.
There's other things I could say.
Well, I thought it was the shaman stuff.
Exactly. That's what I just said.
Yeah.
She doesn't get it yet. I'll have to say something. Roasted aroma. All over my notebook. You gotta remember to wipe this down.
Chair.
Well, yeah, because I just slobbered on it with my roast aroma. The coin is one of the four suits of the tarot. And what Coyote's discussion focused on was higher level meanings of that. It corresponds to the sun. The sun has several, these are just kind of a recapitulation of the facts for those who may not have watched Coyote's show last week, who may not be interested in Coyote's class on the teachings of the Toltec survivor. The big picture of that is in 2007, Coyote was guided to produce a class, and it was called the Esoterics course, about higher level, poorly understood by the masses information of a spiritual nature. The class was 17 weeks long. It was recorded, and the transcript of the class became a book called The Teachings of the Toltec Survivor. And contrary to popular opinion, Coyote is not the Toltec survivor. Read the book, and you will probably figure it out what that means. Chapter 1, which was covered last week in his teaching, kind of sets the stage for the higher level work and the concept of esoteric orders in a slightly different approach than the rudimentary one I gave a month or two ago, based on the writings of Dion Fortune. He went in another direction that I hadn't gone yet, which is that the ancient esoteric schools all involve the use of male-female alchemy, which is the use of male-female energies to stimulate more rapid transformation of your own nature, your consciousness, your connections to the higher planes, more rapid stimulation of the neural development and connections to the light bodies and light body development than would happen just by trying to be a good person and live a good life and be spiritual and pray to God. So those are all good things. That's the starting point. You need to be doing that. That's part of what I call the horizontal path. The path here on the horizontal earth plane, the Malkuthian part of the universe. And throughout history, different batches of teachings have been delivered to humanity on how to accelerate our development. This planet being an alchemical cauldron, if you want to think of it that way. And by that, I'm referring to the fact that here in the physical world, we're cooking things. We've created the conditions that will permit reactions to happen. And just like a chemical reaction, they produce end effects that would not otherwise happen or would take a lot longer than they otherwise would without the right catalysts and the right conditions. So we do things in a pressure cooker, just in the kitchen. Heat and pressure go up. We do things that way that would not be possible just cooking in a pot on a stove at room temperature and room pressure. Good question.
Well, just a comment. It seems like if we decided that we were gonna train for a triathlon, you know, we would go into that with an understanding, hopefully, that we were gonna have to do some serious work on self, you know, putting ourselves through training and pushing ourselves past, you know, our potential limits and, you know, balancing all of that so that you don't overdo it and yet, you know, not letting off so that you don't, you know, get behind in your training. So I'm not sure why it seems like it's so much of a big deal to apply that same concept then to our spiritual training, especially when we are in fact creating a physical change to ourselves.
Right.
And I guess maybe that's the big thing is when you think about being on a spiritual path or, you know, gaining some kind of tools or enlightenment or whatever it is that's motivating people to do the work. It, you know, it seems like there's a disconnect there from the fact that it is really like going to school, like we have to study and, you know, practice and do, you know, work in a group and get tested and pass on to another level. So I've just been pondering that because, you know, it just seems like, I mean, I've been working on this for 12 years and some of this is just finally sinking into me, you know, because I've been through my ups and downs and wanting to run away screaming and all of that, and yet now I can at least have a track record enough that I can see that pushing through that actually has mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual shifts.
What you said is exactly right.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
I wasn't planning on talking that long.
what you're saying is exactly right, and that's part of where I'm going.
I better turn my phone
We
off.
are in a process. If you do the Toltec work, it is the fastest way I know of to transform your consciousness and your spirit. If you want to use the old slogan from somebody, be the best you can be. Was that Arnie or something? Arnie ads when they were trying to recruit the young kids to
Well, it's either
Turn
that
it
or the
into
Olympics or something.
be the best, whatever it is. So be the best you can be. There's a huge amount of potential for a human being, even without adding in the transformative work in a spiritual school or in martial arts or things like that. Just, we can exercise, do physical exercise, we can eat healthy, and we can have and embrace a higher purpose in life. We can have and embrace all the things on the horizontal path about being a good person and helping our fellow humans and helping the planet and helping the animals and treating every living being with respect. That's the horizontal plane, and most of humanity isn't doing it.
Mhm.
This work, the Toltec work, uses that as a starting point. Right?
The horizontal plane.
You have a well-balanced horizontal plane, and that's what you're going to be building your ladder on top of. So if your horizontal plane is holes in the floor
Oh.
and you're not taking care of it, and it's not level and balanced, it's a really lousy foundation to build your ladder on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the prerequisite for the Toltec work. And that's one reason why so few people are suited for the Toltec work. Because you look around in humanity, you look on the evening news, if anybody still watches that sort of thing, and you read what's going on in the internet, and you realize at least 90%, if not 98% of humanity isn't even doing the horizontal plane correctly. And there are forces who do know the truth of all this, who are trying very hard to keep you from even knowing that there's higher work that can be done that will be transformative for humanity. So that's where you get famous radio and television talk show personalities. Whenever anybody brings this up, oh, come on. You don't believe that garbage, do you? Well, yes, and it's not garbage. Oh, come on. I can't tell you how many times I've heard. I mean, that's the sum total of your argument against higher spirituality. Oh, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, come on.
That's hocus pocus.
No, they don't even go that far. They don't even say, oh, that's hocus
It's
pocus.
shaming you that you
Yeah.
have an opinion.
So, you need that foundation. Then the higher work, building that, doing this consciousness work, there's one aspect of it which Coyote is talking about in chapter 1 and periodically throughout the book, The Teachings of the Toltec Survivor, which alludes to this higher work unifying male and female forces and energies. And this is some of the material that has been most closely guarded throughout history
Mm-hmm.
because of its sexual nature. This isn't just fraternal love we're talking about. This is a male and a female engaging in intercourse and utilizing their sexual forces in a way to produce something that isn't possible during normal rutting behavior. So, and it works. It involves higher level activations of energy centers in your body. And there's an awful lot of work you can do on yourself, even if you don't have a partner. But ultimately, the highest forms of this require a male and a female to combine their energies and their body fluids in a way that is not normal, or at least not common. It's normal from the standpoint we're created with that ability latent within us. but it's certainly not common, and it's not taught widely, and that's why when you read the medieval literature, it's all using symbolism that it's supposed to be and intended to be instructions, but until you've actually done it, you can't understand the instructions. It's another application of Coyote's story about the seaman's license, which is in the Toltec survival book.
I was wondering if you, say I could use the coins in everyday use, if you use my female side and my male side, and like have the male side come to the priestess, give the priestess the coin.
Yes, you could do that, and you have to develop your male side. That's the mental
Yeah.
side. That's the descending column on the tree of life.
Because my question was, because I've seen energetically when you and Aria Luce are working together, what happens, I see what happens energetically or
Yeah.
whatever word,
Mhm.
and that's why I'm asking
This is
about the coins.
the descending column. This is the ascending column. This is the feminine path. This is the male path. And under normal circumstances, energy is grounded down here in Malkuth.
Can't see anything below the bird. No, there.
Is this better?
Mhm.
Where is the bottom edge of the screen?
Right where your hand is.
Oh, okay, so you could see that.
Yeah.
Okay. So normally the energy is brought down here. The job is to not let it go down, but to reverse it. So there's a certain part of this every individual can and must learn to do themselves.
So you're cycling it around instead
Yes.
of going down and grounding out, right?
Right.
Exactly.
So that's why when you say keep your frequency up, that's what you want.
Yes, that's another
Done.
application of this concept.
Okay. Ding ding. Light bulbs going off.
Good.
Thank
So the coin then represents activating and purifying this heart center and the sacral center to levels and abilities that aren't common. And as you go through Coyote's class and read the book and ponder it and sleep with it under your pillow or whatever it takes to get that information in, you will start to understand more. His whole discussion of the exoteric, the mesoteric, and the esoteric applies to pretty much all knowledge. So there's a higher version of his book. He's only talking about the mesoteric in his discussion. He's talking about in his class things that aren't written in the book, but that's still only the level of the mesoteric. There's higher level of understanding, and some of that requires experience. So, good question.
Thank you for explaining that, both of you.
Glad I could be of assistance.
Can I just add one thought to all of that?
Please.
Only if you switch the camera. It's a click.
Gonna have to get another
2
camera.
clicks, maybe.
We're gonna have to manifest another camera.
I never figure out how to do it.
It's a little eye thing.
No. Okay. Hi. So I guess the thing is that while the core of the concept of bringing down male or positively charged energy and bringing up the negatively charged energy, like we do with the Akadiwa when we're making a circuit, is, when you think about it in actual, literal context of sexual energy and recreation or procreation, the male is not grounding out the energy. It's being caught in the womb, and it's being changed alchemically, right? And then we're lifting up a new energy from that point. So that's the literal, okay? So then everything else from there, there's so many layers of the concept, just like the flow of the energy down one side and the raising of it above. The flowing that male and female energy through yourself, flowing it between another person, flowing it, in groups. It's it's kind of a core foundation to how energy works. Energy has to flow, so you have to have that positive and negative charge to get movement. Otherwise, it's just going to be stagnant. So it's fundamental to creation in a procreative way here in a Malkuthian environment. But then from the perspective of God and the creation of the universe, the energy is being sent out, and this work, the great work that we're talking about, is returning that energy, lifting up. This is the job of the priestess, is to take that, male patriarchal energy coming down, harness it, and redirect it. So there's multiple layers to the concept, besides just sexual alchemy.
Right.
Just, but, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so
Sure, blow our minds and go, that's it.
so moving right along. I wanted to kind of recapitulate a few things. Before I start on that, who's online?
We have Dennis Brown,
Dennis Brown.
Dennis.
Patty C,
Patty C, we miss you here.
Yes, we do.
Mohadib,
Wadid.
and that's all of it's admitting that they're online.
Okay, how many who aren't admitting
There's
anything?
5, so there's one that's not telling.
And not Maria?
Maria's not done yet. She's had a lot going on. She's got her one dog that's getting old and has had some bad health issues. She has a new puppy.
Oh,
Trying to smooth the transition.
and she's going to move, right?
Well, she keeps threatening to. I don't know where that process is. I'm hoping she moves a lot closer.
She was originally, last I heard, Colorado. She wanted to move.
Yeah, I've heard Montana. I've heard Colorado. So as long as she gets over the Rocky Mountains, I'll be happy. We've just finished several batches of work the last few months, and we're getting ready to start some new work. And I think this is a good time. We've hit a small plateau. I'm going to summarize some of the things that are a brief summary of some of the knowledge we've shared, say in the last 3 months, and some of the levels of understanding I'm hoping you have achieved, and the summary of the things I'm expecting you to be striving for, and then we'll be ready to go on. So, the basics, some of the core Toltec principles are to be working to the higher concept of you have an intent. Intent with a capital I. We should not ever be conducting our lives or our day-to-day activities with a random, non-arranged, non-thought-out purpose. If at any moment you were to ask yourself the question, why am I doing what I'm doing? You should instantly know the answer. What is this task you're doing? Oh, I'm cleaning my house. Why? So it can have as close to the effect of being a temple as I can make this physical old farmhouse. Oh, okay. Why are you doing that? Why do you want that? Oh, so I can have better connections with my spiritual work to connect with spirit. Well, what do you want to do that for? Why? What's your purpose? Well, so I can find out my true will in life. Oh, well, that sounds important. How's that working out? Good. There's a chain of thought there. Because ultimately, if you're doing this work, your intent should be to find and accomplish your true will. The larger purpose of achieving transcendence for humanity is basically just another way of saying what the Christians say, which is reestablishing the kingdom of God on earth. There is a higher level of performance and functioning to be had for the human race than what we are currently using or performing to.
Will you repeat what you said after she transcends to humanity?
I'll say that again.
What you just said after what she transcends to humanity?
That's the same thing that the Christians call the return of the kingdom of God. So, the key to the kingdom of God is the formula is given in many sacred writings, including the Judeo-Christian Bible, including the Hindu texts and the Ayurvedic texts, at least some of them. And it's basically each person has to become like Christ, like Jesus Christ. The people who are out there in the universe not wanting to deal with the dark past side of the Christian religion, and therefore they've thrown out the baby with the bathwater, quite literally. They will talk about Christ consciousness as their compromise position. They ignored the messenger, the divine messenger who came into deliver. Oh, we'll just focus on his message. But we'll ignore Christ. We'll just do this Christ consciousness thing, and not even really acknowledge that they named their Christ consciousness after Christ. So that's really what we're going for, is the kingdom of God, the transcendence of humanity, the liberation of humanity. These are some of the terms. So in the Toltec lineage, our intent as a group revolves around that. One of the that's the big intent. The little intent is day by day, moment by moment, week by week, we work with a series of small intents. Well, I can't worry about saving the planet this week, but I can clean my house. So we clean this place as best we are able every Monday to get ready for this event. We dust, we mop, we sweep, we vacuum, we declutterify, and we energetically purify the space. And so that's what we do. It's a little intent. I'm going to purify my space. I'm a little intent. I'm going to read this important document. I'm not going to watch TV. I'm going to give up my 2 hours of sitcoms and whatever else is on TV this century. And I'm going to read EJ's book or Coyote's book or some of the other books that are on the suggested reading list. Or where we're going later on in this discussion tonight is wherever you're guided. Because that's part of where we're at, is I'm going through the kind of the basics that by now most of you should know and be doing, and we can all get better at it. And then it's time to be doing some of your own work. One of the concepts that we use in the Toltec work is the idea of building personal power. The personal power is a reservoir of energy that you build up every time you accomplish a goal. You set a little intent, you go out and do it, and you build personal power. So that's one of the things we should be doing, is when you have enough personal power, then you can use it not just for little goals, but you can use it for big goals. Big intents. And the way you start to choreograph all this is what we talked about there for a month and a half, a couple, 3 months ago, which is the philosophy and the mind of a warrior. Toltecs describe the people in this path as Toltec warriors. And a Toltec warrior has 3 core natures. And everybody better get this answer right. The 3, say that again louder. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, we have part of our nature that is a dreamer, part of our nature that is a stalker, and part of our nature that is a warrior. And many of the students, needed the refresher this lifetime on what the warrior nature was all about. So we did that 6-week series of the warrior nature. And it's how to assess, to stalk the situation, to consider the possibilities, and to take appropriate action. It's the alchemical furnace of getting yourself ready for all of that. Every day, little by little, doing your work. And not just your reading and your meditating, it's physical preparation. We need some kind of physical activity to hone you and refine you. Some of the highest performing warriors throughout history have been some of the highest performing spiritual individuals. Whether it was the Knights Templar in Europe, or the samurai in Japan, or the fighting Shaolin monks in China, and probably a host of others throughout history that I am not as well versed with. The physical training is both a meditation and a physical training. And it pushes you and it refines you in ways that just the meditation alone can't do. So you make better spiritual progress by combining them, and you make better physical progress than if you just went out and exercised, but you had no spiritual component to that activity. Is that a question?
Obviously physical training is gonna be best, but, wouldn't, like, working in the ashram or doing the pogging and all the orbs and stuff also be a certain level of physical training?
Yeah. That's part of it. It can be part of it. And, if you're not able to come out and train with me with a goal of working to become a black belt in karate, learn to pull a trigger, learn to throw knives, learn to draw a bow, learn to shoot a crossbow. There's a great book, which I don't have this one. I think I used to, and I think it disappeared, called Zen and the Art of Archery. It's based on the Japanese form of archery, which is called Kyudo. And you learn how to become one with the void and one with the arrow and one with your target. And you don't aim. You know, modern competitive archery and hunting archery, they've got these sights and they're doing this and it's all very scientific and mechanical. That's not the way the samurai fired their bows. They just looked at their target and they went. They never aimed. And they rarely missed. Because they were in that state. They were in that zanshin state that we talked about. So something physical needs to be part of your personal practice. Unless you've got some kind of real injury, then you go train. If you're feeling good, you train. If you're feeling bad, you train. You're in a bad mood, you train. You're in a good mood, you train. The answer to everything is go train.
Wax on, wax off.
Yeah, exactly. Just like meditation. You're in a good mood, you're comfortable, you're all blissed out, go meditate. You're in a really bad mood, you're frustrated, you're angry at the world, you physically don't feel like sitting still for 20 minutes. That's when you need to go meditate for 40. So you go meditate, you go train, you do your reading. I don't feel like it. Go read twice as long. Those are the basic principles. Right? Attention, intent. Do your physical work. Do your spiritual work. Do your personal practice.
We didn't really talk much about attention.
Attention. Attention! Attention is putting all your focus, all your concentration on one thing and one thing only at a time. And when you can do that, then you add a second layer of attention, and you have your primary attention, your second attention, and a third, and beyond that. You learn to live in this dream and the other dream at the same time with your attention. The martial arts term for this is kine. That focus, everything comes from here, and you put everything in there. You slicing that carrot as if each slice determined the future of humanity, including yourself. You slice the celery the same way, each slice. You wax on, wax off. Every stroke of the wax. Which way was wax on and which way was sand? I don't know. Way too many years since I watched that movie. And you put all your energy into that. So there's the philosophy and mind of the warrior that unifies and guides that. It's that discipline. Then we talked about overcoming the limitations that are inherent with our human biological machine. We talked about the fact that the machine is an interface to our essence. And the goal is to get the essence driving, not the ego mind, the machine mind. And we learned how to detangle the thoughts and desires of the machine from the thoughts and desires of your essence. To work to that higher will, to train the ego, to train your machine, and to use the machine as a tool to wake up the essence, to achieve and transition through that waking state, or through the barriers into the waking state. We talked about what those barriers look like. All the agitations, the angers, the frustrations. The chronic, as what the name EJ gives that barrier. And the goal is to learn in the moment to identify that that's what's happening. The other person isn't just being rude. You're up against your chronic. You have a moment of realization while you're still in that state to go, and pass through into the waking state. Merge with and pass through. It's like the fear can be used the same way, like in the Dune series when I talk about that litany against fear. You move through it into the waking state. And it's from the waking state where we can really start to do our work, both individually and collectively. So that's kind of the summary of a lot of the key concepts. And so then the question becomes, what do you do with it? So you've got your attention thing going on, you have an intent, you're doing your physical training, you're doing your personal practices, you're learning to recognize and move through your chronic, and you get to that waking state. Well, that's kind of where we're at, right? Is what's next. Now that you're all masters of all of that.
Never run again.
It's what's next. What do you do? What can you
He's
do?
funny.
What do you do with it?
Work for humanity.
Yeah.
Work for the POG.
Work for the group. Yeah, that's all good. There's a couple of steps, the higher level steps. Okay, so you've got your Malthusian plane. You have to keep taking care of that. There's never a time when you get to turn that off and ignore the Malthusian plane, to ignore the horizontal work. There's always something you need to be doing out there in the horizontal work. Some kind of act of service. Some kind of acts of purity. But like I was saying, that's the beginning, that's not the end. There are people for whom that's all they've got. That's all they're capable of. Give them all the help you can. Great. Go do that, go do that, go do that. I'll help. Not everybody is suited to build that ladder and climb the tree. And even of those who are, not very many of those are suited to do the Toltec work. Sorry, cutie. One of the things that I keep alluding to is you're here on a mission. A divine mission to accomplish your true will. There's a very specific piece of this great work called the Kingdom of God, the Transcendence of Humanity. A very specific piece of it that you are here to do. You and no one else. So finding out what that is kind of crucial to your success in this incarnation. An incarnation is a terrible thing to waste. That's a good t-shirt.
I know, I was thinking that.
Those of you who've been writing down t-shirt slogans, the time is now. I need those notes back. So you don't want to waste it. It took a lot of effort of a lot of forces and spiritual beings helping to create the right conditions for you to come into this incarnation to have the chance to do this piece of work that you're here to do. So please don't waste this opportunity. And to find that out, a crucial step in that process is to make contact with and learn to commune with your holy guardian angel. This is the guide that's been before you since you were born, who guided you through the birth process, who watches over you and is with you constantly.
Do they choose your parents?
You choose
I've,
your parents.
I've heard that, but
The guardian, there's probably a little collaboration that goes on, but everything about it, you know, they could be suggestions. Maybe you've got half a dozen, but when you look at all the forces and everything that, for your own growth and development, I need this and this and this, and I want to get 2 of them, and these are the only parents where I can get it all, and if I'm born now, then all the astrological forces will be conspiring to help me rather than hinder me. I'll go do that one. You had to approve it. That's your part of your divine contract. So yeah, you picked them. You could have said no, and you could have waited another millennia or 2 to have a shot again. But when the forces are there, I've talked at great length about that concept of the window of opportunity. And when the window opens and you've got this narrow window to get through and do something, you have to be willing to act. Okay, that's the warrior nature. The dreamer came up with the idea, the stalker planned it out, and now it's time to go be born and do your will. Act. Pull that trigger. Release that arrow. Go do it. And then do the best you can. And that's the part I'm going to help you all with. Is using this higher knowledge to help you do that. Then, once you've got that, everything up to then is getting ready for that. Learning your attention, learning your discipline, learning to be impeccable, learning to master the mind and body of a warrior.
Knowing yourself.
Knowing yourself. Learning to recognize when the symptoms and the angers and the frustrations you're experiencing are you up against your chronic, and you've got your ego-based self-defense filter on, and everything coming at you in the universe, you're passing through that filter, because you have to learn to throw that filter away. Say, oh, I'm just up against my chronic. These are symptoms of the machine. This is not my essence talking. And this happens with great regularity in this work. There's a very predictable, observable response that every student goes through at different times of being up against their chronic and blaming everybody for those symptoms except themselves. You blame your teacher. I blamed Coyote. You probably blamed Coyote. That son of a mother effing pinchy shaman. That's a bad word in Spanish.
oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I won't say the English translation here online.
Can I just say the one thing about that moment when you think that everybody's against you or that you're right and everybody's wrong is you might be right. You know, you might theoretically be correct in your position.
mhm.
What's wrong with the situation is you can't talk about it intelligently. You know, that you can't disconnect your emotions, lower emotions, from the subject matter, that we allow someone else to push our buttons. Even if we're right, it doesn't matter if we're the ones flipping off the handle. So that, I think, I always talk about that as being the urban shaman. If we can only be in our place of power when we're in our meditational space in our little temple, away from everybody else, or when we're in control of the situation, then we're not much good when the shit hits the fan. You have to be the one to act.
Right. You're not good to yourself, nor to anybody else. And we're being trained as Toltecs to be good not just to ourselves and not just to our core group, but to all of humanity. And if you freak out because the teacher's being mean to you again by picking on you and pointing out a mistake, and I've seen people scream and run away more than once from this school, from Coyote school, from EJ's school. It happens. You talk to any teacher who's been doing this more than a week, and they're going to have stories. I think my first runaway screaming was about 3 months into my teaching. One of my first students signed, oh yeah, this is great, until the first thing comes along that upsets the apple cart because it's new and different and scary, and they scream and run away. Like, okay. Out the door they went, never to be seen again. And it's not the last one that's happened.
I have a question.
1492? Someday that'll be the right answer.
No, I've been up against several chronics at once, and I'm maintaining and knowing what's going on and observing everything. And is there some kind of mourning period? Does the ego go into like a grief period that it's losing control? I don't know how to describe it.
The ego is what keeps you alive. If us and our ancestors didn't have an ego, we'd all be dead, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. The ego is the conscious mind of the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you don't want your ego to die. You don't want your ego to be suppressed or turned off.
Right.
You want your ego to be retrained. And so the ego will feel mourning and grief and nostalgia and loss because the things it used to do, it's no longer allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the key to smooth that transition is to give the ego new tasks, new jobs, to teach it that this higher level work that you needed to do is even more important than what it used to do, which is just keeping you alive, which was already important. And that's what the bulk of EJ's book is about. And the EJ book I'm referring to, of course, is The Human Biological Machine as a Transformational Apparatus. So that has exercise, has a description, and that's the quintessential textbook on this matter of recognizing the difference between your essence and your machine. The wants and desires and the tendencies of the machine, the predilections, the addictions, the obsessions of the machine that need to always be right, which was one of mine I had to get over. Because I used to get very upset when I would think I was wrong. And then it would turn out I was right, and my mistake was thinking I was wrong.
Well, your job in NASA, you would want to be right.
Well, that was part of my early training, right?
Yeah.
Was working on the space shuttle program. I was trained by the people who invented the space program, the manned spaceflight program. I worked with many people who had been present at every single manned spaceflight we'd ever launched, all the way back to Mercury 1,
Wow.
to Alan Shepard's flight. I had one other guy that I met and got to know a little, who had been present for literally every single missile flight out of Cape Canaveral ever.
Wow.
From the 50s on up into the 80s when I was working. Every rocket, every missile that flew manned or unmanned, he had been there and worked. So that's who trained me. And there's what's called the rocket scientist's mantra, which is you have to be right, but you have to know that you're right. You have to know why you are right, and you have to know all that right now. No delays, no guessing, boom. Lightning strikes the Apollo rocket going up, and all the telemetry and communication between the ground and the rocket fails, except for voice communication, which is on a different system. And the flight controller tells the EPS controller, we're in deep yogurt here, what do you recommend? SCE to aux. SCE stood for Spacecraft Electronics. It named Spacecraft Electronic Unit on board. Aux is the auxiliary, there's primary and auxiliary. Right? It's a box that 2 of the 3 astronauts on board didn't even know where it was. Right?
Good thing one of them did.
The commander knew. He had more training. Oh yeah, that's back here. Yeah, because remember, they're lying on their back
Right.
at that point. He reaches with her and goes, think, and everything starts to work again. Only one person in the whole Houston Ground Control knew the answer to that problem. Only one. Out of about 1,000 people supporting that knowledge in various control rooms. But it was the one guy who was on the console and needed to know it. And he had trained himself to know it.
He was a warrior.
Yeah. After that mission, there were 1,000 people in Houston Control who knew the answer to that problem. But right then, at that moment, he saved the mission because he knew it. He knew he was right. He knew he was right. He knew he was right. He knew why he was right, and he knew it right now. It's probably the ultimate example I can think of for getting it right. So that was a warrior's moment.
Mm-hmm.
So put yourself in that position. Whatever field of endeavor you're in, whatever your activity is in, have you trained yourself to be that astute and that well honed and sharpened in your field of knowledge to know that right now, to save the mission? Otherwise, they would have given the command and they would have had to abort, and the whole thing would have been a waste. The capsule would have been ejected, they would have blown the rest of it up, and they would have parachuted down, and the whole thing would have been an embarrassing failure instead of being a rousing success to go on and land on the moon. Which they did.
Was it a freak accident?
No, it was lightning.
Wow.
They got hit by lightning. They had a narrow window, right? The weather was squishy, meaning it was borderline. And they went. And the rocket got hit by lightning.
Well, that must have been
Yeah.
pretty scary.
Might have zapped it, and it zapped the electronics. But that was back in the days when electronics were robust. And there was an answer to that problem. And the answer was SCE to auxiliary. Think. One guy on the ground knew the answer, and only one of the 3 astronauts knew where the box was and where the switch was. Oh yeah, think. That's a warrior. So, where are we going with this? I've given those of you who are watching this who are formal students in this work a task. Actually, I've given you 2. I've given you one to work on as a group, and I've given you one that can either be individual or as a group. And it's time for you to shine. It's time for you to go forth and do good and conquer evil and find your path, find your purpose, find your holy guardian angel, find your true will, and start doing it. You need to have your work. I'm teaching you skills so you can do your work. Part of your work is yours, uniquely yours. And part of your work is to support this Toltec party to do our work for the benefit of all beings everywhere.
Oh,
So your job is to kick everything you do up a couple notches because time is running out.
I thought you were going to say kick ass.
That's coming.
Right.
It's either you kick ass or I will kick your ass. Right?
An incarnation is a terrible thing to waste.
Yes.
It's not me who will be kicking your rear end. It's you. There is a higher truth to be had. The world we see around us is not all there is. What we see is a holographic projection. It's agreed to by the human collective consciousness, which is being heavily manipulated by forces of the dark side. A lot of what we need to access to is hidden.
For a good reason, right?
Well, some of it's hidden for a good reason, but some of it's being hidden by evil intent. We're being distracted. You know, it's the red pill, blue pill thing. It's the divide and conquer energies that they've been using since at least the time of World War II and the Nazis. That energy is still existing. It's still being used against us. And it's ancient. It's the ancient dark energy current that is infecting humanity like an insidious virus. And our job is to recognize it and overcome it. Last week, I had quoted the movie Matrix. Anybody remember that quote? Let me tell you why you're here, then. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. And in the movie, Morpheus tells me that the next line is, it's that feeling that has brought you to me. And what I've done is I've twisted that. That feeling is what brings you to the work. Because you know there's more. You know that when you look around and you look at the mainstream media and the mainstream public education, that there's something else out there waiting to be found. And it's important. And at some point, if you acknowledge it, every human has this vague notion that there's something important for them to do. And if they talk about it to the wrong person, they're accused of having delusions of grandeur. And if they don't learn how to train these feelings, you become like Napoleon. You do get delusions of grandeur. The mind needs to be honed and trained, and then it needs to be upgraded to higher levels of performance. And what I've laid out tonight is a recapitulation of the basic roadmap of how to do that. There's a few details that get filled in along the way. And then once you've got that awareness that you have a purpose and that there's something that we can't see when we look around the holodeck, we have to find the switch to turn off the holographic projection or to change it to the new one, or at least like on the Star Trek episodes, there's a switch where you could, if you find it, you can turn it and find the door outside the holodeck into the reality world, the real world beyond the veil. And failing that leaves most of us, we start with learning to communicate beyond the veil. Learning to communicate with our holy guardian angel, our essence, our other angels and guides, the dwellers on the higher unseen planes. You have an opportunity when you've mastered a certain set of those skills to make contact with those beings and be initiated on the higher planes into this great work. To become an initiate of the higher work, not just the lower work. Any questions?
Well, if we're gonna have to help humanity wake up, it's kind of overwhelming if they swallowed the blue pill. How do you help them?
That's actually discussed in the movie The Matrix, which we watched, a year ago or more. A lot of people don't want to be woken up.
Yeah, and a lot of people run away because they don't want to look at their shit.
Right. That happens too. The truth is, contrary to what most bodhisattvas are hoping for, and contrary to what most airy-fairy, fluffy, new age teachers and wannabe gurus will tell you, is not everybody will be woken up. Those who will be woken up will be able to move on to something higher. Those who don't will get left behind. This concept leads to a great deal of confusion and misinformation in the world of spirituality and all the writings, all the systems, all the isms out there, all the descriptions of what is life after death, how is the universe structured, is there reincarnation? No, there not. Yes, there is. The general consensus, using the lawyer's standard of a preponderance of evidence, is that the souls incarnating in human bodies at this point in time are not all the same. and they are roughly divided into two categories. Those that are engaging in the process of the karmic cycle and rebirth and progression of the souls, and those that have not yet started the karmic process. For those who have started the karmic process, we undergo reincarnation. We choose a life, we come back. We choose another life, we come back. If you have not, if you're part of the really almost like a different sub-race of humanity, you haven't started that yet. You come in here, you live, and you die, you are in a holding pattern. And what's needed for that second category to start is the first category of humans has to move on. I mean, speaking of moving on, it's the humans that are doing this. We need a critical mass of those who are on the karmic rebirth cycle to break that cycle by mastering karma. And when the critical mass reaches it, the whole group will move on to something else. Just as important, probably more so. Just as complex, if not more so. Just as elegant, if not more so. It's the next level up on the video game. Video game Earth, I sometimes call it. When that happens, the second group will be allowed the opportunity to come in and start their process of karmic cycles and rebirths. There will be individuals in that first group who aren't going to make it because in their last lifetime or two they haven't pushed through those barriers. They haven't gotten over the edge. They will drop down into that second group and have to go through many, many, many more lifetimes yet again before they will have an opportunity to move on. This is all information that's based on quite a few ancient writings. I've read similar things on somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen different authors, written and spoken different ways, but all saying essentially the same thing. So the time for this crucial transition is now. Some of us are ready to move on. We are here in this incarnation as long as it takes to get a batch of work done, and then the ship sails. And those who aren't on it have to wait. And it'll be at least 26,000 years before they get that opportunity.
If that isn't an incentive to get your shit here.
And I acknowledge not everybody believes in reincarnation. All I can tell you is when you do your work and you advance your spiritual consciousness to the point where you can see the higher planes yourself, you don't have to take anybody's word for it. You get to look and see for yourself. And then everything that every spiritual teacher has ever said becomes a moot point. You're going to go look and you're going to go, oh, well, my, that's not what I expected. Those sons of guns were right on many things. So this is what the Toltec work is. That's a little bit of the big picture, that's some of the details. And what I most am encouraging you all to do is, number one, kick it up a notch. You should be doing all this stuff I've rattled off every day. You just said that if that's not an incentive to do your work, then what is? I don't know what else is. If that isn't it, I don't know. So this is the time. You've got the tools. Get to work. Every day. This needs to be your driving force. This needs to be your purpose. Oh, sure, you might have to go work to earn money. And that should not be your driving purpose unless you're getting paid to do your true will.
Is there a warrior's true will?
I'll say that again.
Okay, there's our true will, but is there a warrior's true will?
Well, if you go read the philosophy, like you read Miyamoto Musashi, and the warrior dedicates himself to service of something higher.
Right.
You know,
So he's
the
our
warrior dedicates himself to the general and to the cause of the war. The general to the cause of the kingdom and the defense of the people. In this great work, the higher cause, the equivalent of that, is the transcendence of humanity. It's taking that portion of humanity that needs to get their act together and stop identifying with the blue pill level of reality and start identifying with the higher planes of reality and move on. That's our cause. That's what we're here to do. So for the Toltec warrior, that the service of that cause is the higher will. It's the transcendence, the kingdom of God, the advancement of humanity. Any other questions? Anybody online have anything that's repeatable? What's that?
I said, nobody's online. You had asked earlier about who wasn't logged on to say something. So Miss Olivia said something.
Something.
Yeah. And Lonnie is on with us, and Maria showed up.
Hi,
Maria. Olivia
Hi, Olivia.
And
Lonnie.
And Lonnie. Hello.
Melody Brennator outside because he was grumpy.
Okay.
And Mohadib has another level 1 scheduled for August 10th.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Yay.
where? And ask her where.
Is that in Red Bluff, Mohadib? And Serenity says hi.
Hello,
Oh.
Serenity. We miss you. Okay.
And then I have a few announcement-y things when you're ready.
Okay. Tell Muad'Dib, if you get us a flyer for your class, we will start spreading it around. And announcement-y kind of things. This is as good a time as any.
Okay, so I sent out an email to students regarding the animation project, offering my services as a production manager just to keep us on track and keep things moving. But the momentum needs to come from everyone, and I've received 3 responses to that. that they received it, not necessarily, yes, this sounds good. So that's what I'm looking for, is a yes, this sounds good,
Yes, it sounds good.
or a better suggestion.
I'm in.
Alright, one down. Yvonne, who's in. Okay, so then, because the state of our world is in flux and we happen to live on an earthquake fault, which is in movement, and we spent most of our summer last year preparing to bug out because of fires, which thank goodness have not started in our area. And we did a shamanic weekend a while back where we all admitted that we're not really prepared. So I am willing to do a preparedness class, and that can be online if enough people online want it online, or if you want to come up here, we can do it up here or both.
I'm in.
And just I've been looking at our calendar, which is like September is shot. So right now the only dates I have available before October would be August 3rd or 17th, which are Saturdays. So email, text me, or whatever, let me know what you want to do, if you want to be involved in that, or if you can do either one of those dates. Just a reminder that in September, the 27th, 28th, and 29th is the Avatars of the Earth gathering up here in Mount Shasta. This is an international group event, which is, got a pretty positive message. You can check them out online. But both Golden Eagle and myself have been asked to speak at that event, and we will have a Kadua, and it's a booth. And so just a reminder that if you that you should be available to help with the event, provide something for the event, or do something if you're a student to help market or promote that event. So let Golden Eagle know what you would like to do in terms of that, and we are going to be meeting the weekend before that to help get prepped for it. So just a reminder about that. Also, this is probably mostly for people locally, but I'm doing canning of fruit. So I'm going to be getting fruit over the next couple of weeks and be canning it. If you are interested in that and want to learn or be involved, also you can email or text me. And the final thing I have is several of us have lost loved ones over the last few months, or have gone through, some kind of traumatic separation from family and friends and so forth. So I'm going to be taking a group of Voyagers through the 49 chambers of the ABD over the next, I guess that's a month and a half. So, if you would like to contribute a name to that list, I need the name and approximately, just some really basics about the situation. Are they already passed? Are they in a coma? Are they in addiction? Or, and what location might be associated with them. And then also, if any of you would like to at least have an initial instruction in the ABD, I can do that as well, which again can be one of those 2 weekends in August, or we're looking at October. And if we wait till October, it would be a really good time maybe to do it like for leading up to All Saints Day and Day of the Dead. Samhain and all.
Samhain.
I would
That's
love
my name.
to.
So that might be a better date to do kind of, at least
Yeah.
training work with that, because I think it's a skill that some of you are interested in picking up. And if you don't want to do it yourself, at least knowing how to do it and what it's about. There's some options like with the Labyrinth Readers Society where they'll actually do the readings for you. And in this case, that's what I'm offering. So let me know. That's all I got.
Okay, that's all good stuff. Thank you, Aurea.
Thank you. I'm available for the 3rd and 17th of August.
Okay.
Okay. So, next week we are beginning a series that is the long-awaited instruction on the Tree of Life. It is the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. My approach is not classically Hebrew. It is not even classically Western esoteric magic based. It will include a few elements of all of that. I will be including information about the Tarot, the Tree of Life, as well as different meditations you can do at home, trying to put in, and sacred geometry. I'm trying to put this into a context of making it practical. It can be very mystical and theoretical, and it can be very practical, and we are living in this every day, every moment of every day. And this is the roadmap to this plane and all the higher planes. So no matter whether you're a Toltec or some other shamanistic path, or whether you are some other ism, this knowledge of the fundamental structure and the flow of energies in the universe is crucial to your success. So this is going to go on a number of weeks. I could easily see this being a couple of months. And so this batch of work I consider very important. I wanted to do it back in the spring. It didn't happen, so it's going to happen now.
I have something down on the calendar, 8 a.m. It's but I didn't write down what. September 21st.
On what date?
That's a
September?
Saturday. That's
Yeah.
That's our shamanic weekend, which is preparation for the avatars of the earth.
Oh, that's why.
You had said at one time that you might actually do a class on. Is this in lieu of that, or is there a class in there maybe sometime that, or is it?
This is, my intent was that this is in lieu of that. This would be, if any of you know anybody who might be interested, this would be a good series of events to open up to a wider public. And I will run this class based on donation. I'm not going to say, oh, you've got to pay X dollars to hear my version of the Tree of Life. It's all based on donation. And those of you who are students and supporting the school, keep continuing to do that as best you're able. And if you're not a member of the school and you are interested in this work, then please, we would be happy to appreciate any donation that you feel like sharing. My goal with this is to help take the knowledge of the true structure of the universe from being very esoteric and arcane into being a little more well understood, at least among the average spiritual aspirant. Obviously somebody who's head over heels into fantasy football and the blue pill world isn't going to probably be at this class. But this work, I mean, we take very complex subjects like liver detoxification and we package it so that everybody understands, oh, you got to clean up your liver, clean out the GI, and you do this, and here's some herbs, and here's some vitamins, and it works, right? So we can take complex subjects and make them easy. We can take something that's shrouded in mysticism, like the Kabbalah, and use it practically. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this. Even I can do it. Oh, wait. Maybe that's
You
not
did it.
Maybe that's not a good argument. No, sir, all puns aside, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. In fact, it might help you if you're not. Rocket scientists take a lot longer to master this level of information than the average person who isn't a rocket scientist. You want me to build a rocket, I can do that. You want me to be right-brained, I don't know. It took me a while. But I got there. Because I'm a tree of life. Any last questions, comments?
When was your canning date?
Well, we haven't, I need people to get back to me as to whether they're interested or not and whether they're available those 2 weekends. So, it kind of depends on fruit and like I said, if you, like, let's say you and Patricia and Melody are like the only ones up here, you know, we can do it on a Saturday if you're working, but, I just need people to get back to me to tell me whether they're interested or not, and then I'll work it out.
I'm interested in the canning, the preparativeness, and the ABD.
Okay, awesome. I got
So-
it down.
Yeah, and you got me down for the 27th, 28th, and 29th,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, thank you.
So, if there's no more comments, questions, or complaints, then we're going to move on now.
You
Don't
can
forget, I've got plenty of these complaint forms here. Fill it out and
It got bigger than last time,
And
or is that the same one?
that's the same. So, yeah. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, you've got your marching orders. Do good, avoid evil.
I was writing good, I wrote God, like the God particle.
Got one of those right here.